Misty, huh?
Don't you like me?
Stop it, you dirty bastard!
You're a very nice girl.
But who needs nice girls?
Yeah, get lost, assholes!
I never said anything about not coming back for seconds. Don't spoil my fun, darling. I love to give you things. I just want to say how sorry I am about everything.
The thing I hate the most in the whole world is a jealous female.
It's that other bitch, isn't it? Why didn't you take my call? Thank you, David.
You're not something me, Buster Blue Eyes!
Get off my back, Evelyn.
Bye!
Will I see you tomorrow? Aren't you going to play Misty for me?
First time I thought about being a director was way after I'd become an actor. I think it was when I was doing Rawhide, and I had had some discussions with the producers at that time to direct an episode or so. That didn't pan out for one reason or another, so I did some second unit stuff and little bits and pieces here and there. I think Don Siegel was probably my biggest sponsor of the idea of directing films. I had worked with him on quite a few films, and we enjoyed the collaboration very much. And when I went to him in 1970 and told him that I had this little project that I wanted to direct, he said, "Oh, by all means." He said, "Let me support you on that, and let me sign your Directors Guild of America card," and all that sort of thing. It was a great period of my life because it started another segment, and it was a very experimental time for me. I was going off and doing Paint Your Wagon, kind of musical thing up in Oregon, and then coming back and doing Beguiled, and then Misty, and then Beguiled not being a particularly commercial success. To follow it with Misty, probably the logical thing would have been to follow it with an adventure film, Dirty Harry or something, but that didn't work out that way. Jo Hyams was a girl that I'd known for many, many years. She was a legal secretary. She'd say, "I'm going to be a writer, screenwriter someday." I'd say, "Yeah, I'm going to be an actor, and I'm studying acting," what have you. And one day, some years later, she came up with a treatment called Play Misty for Me. I liked the Alfred Hitchcock kind of thriller aspect, but the main thing I liked about it was beyond that, the story was very real. The story was believable because these kind of commitments or misinterpreting thereof go on all the time. Jo Hyams had a female friend that was very much a stalker type, and she didn't commit homicide or anything like that, but she went around and completely harassed this person that she knew very slightly. It was a sort of a great statement on stalking. Nobody ever thought much about that in those days, 1970, and that's something I hadn't seen in the suspense films in general. So I optioned the treatment from her and told her that I wanted to get around to it someday. And then later on, I was working on a film in Europe, and Jo called me up and she said, "Clint, if you're not going to do anything with that picture, I've got an opportunity to sell it to Universal, and they're going to offer me pretty good dough, and I really need the money." So because I was occupied at the time, I said, "Well, I can't hold you back from making some good money, so go ahead and sell it."
Clint Eastwood, hero for hire, blazes his way across a land of lust and injustice.
Later on, I had a 3-picture deal with Universal and became very tied in with them. So I went to Lew Wasserman and I said, "You've got this little project." And I said, "I want to do it and I'll be in it." And I said, "I'd also like to direct it." And Lew just looked, without missing a beat, looked across the desk and said, "That's fine. That's very good." So I said, "Boy, that was easy." So I got up to leave and I started walking down the hallway, and my agent, Lenny Hershan, was with me. And I said to Lenny, I said, "Boy, that was easy." And all of a sudden I heard this behind him, "Oh, Lenny, can we talk to you a minute?" So they called him back and they said, "Yeah, we don't mind Clint directing this film. We just don't want to pay him." We don't want to pay him what his regular 3-picture deal was. We want to pay him less. And Lenny came back later and said, what do you think? And I said, fine, I'll do it for nothing. I said, they're smart not to pay me. They should make me show my stuff. Lenny said, well, let me go back and get just a percentage of the gross profits of the film, and we won't ask for anything. And I said, that's fine by me. Turned out to be a good choice, but at the same time, I would have done it for nothing. I think most people who really want to do something badly will do that. So I think they were saying, you know, we'll let Eastwood go ahead and make this little film, and then he'll go back and he'll do some big adventure for us, and it doesn't matter. And I think they were sort of somewhat placating me at the time.
Well, Clint and I had known each other for many years. We had lived in the same apartment complex. And when he was first getting started, we had worked in the same lot here, this lot, Universal International it was called then. We discussed the business back and forth, and we finally used to say, well, maybe someday we can make our own movies. Well, of course, his career took off very quickly, and he approached me one day and said, why don't we get together, you come to work at El Paso. So I did, and I'd been there just a few weeks when he brought me the script. He was shooting Beguiled at the time with Don Siegel. He said, read this, see what you think about it. So I read it, loved it, identified, and he said, I'd like to do this next. And I said to him, you are thinking of directing it, aren't you? And he's kind of a little shy to say yes about it, but I said, no, you've got a handle on it, you know what you're doing, because he had spent all those 7.5 years on Rawhide, not just appearing, doing his part and going home. He had been watching everything that went on the set, been learning the trade from behind the camera. So I thought, this is your chance. Joe Hyams was the one who wrote the original story, and then she and Dean Reisner cooperated on the screenplay.
Dean Reisner was a writer I'd worked with before, with Don. I met him through Don. We worked on Coogan's Bluff and a couple projects, and he was very good.
He told me the story of Misty, and of course I was thrilled. I was delighted, and he indicated that he'd like me to do it. But he had his definite ideas about the way he wanted to do it.
He cleaned up some of the setups at the beginning and sort of keeping the perspective of the part that I was playing of Dave, keeping his outlook, and at the same time not losing the characters of the girls.
This particular story, it seemed very true to me. It seemed very real, and I liked that quality that it had. It started off gently, and then it built beautifully, I thought.
Play Misty for me.
I was looking for somebody who could play this role, who was attractive, but at the same time had a sort of a quirky side to him, and that's Jessica. She's certainly a terrific gal, terrific actress.
I had actually just moved to California. I'd done several movies in New York, a lot of television in New York, a lot of theater. I had been in a film Sidney Lumet directed, a wonderful movie called The Group.
And she played a gal, and they had all these, a lot of girls, wonderful parts in there for women, but she had a smaller part, but it was very, very effective.
He had looked at that film for another actress. There were 8 actresses in that movie. The group was comprised of 8 women, and he had seen me in the movie.
There was one scene in there where she's been flirting with the ski instructor, and he finally gets annoyed with it. He slapped her, and the look on her face, I said, it was just something, and I said, yeah, that's the person, and that's the person I want.
And I learned a very good lesson, which was never to show the group to anybody, because there were too many good actresses in that movie. But that's how he came to call me.
The studio, of course, wanted a name. They wanted Lee Remick and various other people they had mentioned, but when Jessica came in the office and I just took one look at her, I said, yeah. I said, do you want to do this film? And she says, oh, you bet. And I said, okay.
And I was most pleasantly surprised when I met him for the first time, because he was totally un-movie star-like. Anybody who knows him will tell you he's very laid back, very quiet, soft-spoken. I was very impressed with him at the first meeting that I had, which was a long meeting. He was drinking carrot juice. This was before health foods were really popular, you know. I thought, oh my God, you know, and he offered me something. Of course, I politely said, no thanks. But I liked him immediately. You can't not like him.
I was looking for somebody who just had that zip, something like the old-time actresses used to have. Any of those actresses that came up in the 40s, they had all that kind of, a lot of them had that kind of edge to them. In 1970, there wasn't a lot of that. We were in an era where women's roles were really secondary to the male leads in the film. Most of them were the girl next door, or kind of very little depth to them. I thought that this is one of the best roles for a woman to be a villain in a film, which wasn't being done at that time.
It was a very interesting time for me right before I got Misty. I was doing a soap opera in New York, and I had told them I was leaving. They were trying to get me to sign, and I said, no, I've been there 3 years, it's enough, I really want to go. And I had come out as part of my contract on that to do a nighttime television show, and it was a Dan August.
I was talking to Burt Reynolds. I said, I'm looking for kind of a girl who's got a certain look, but also has some character. And he said, oh, I just worked with this girl on a television episode. She was really good.
About 2 weeks later, got a call from my agent saying, you got a movie. I said, oh, really? How? He said, well, they just want to hire you. It's a movie with Clint Eastwood. Wow.
I liked her right away. So she was another one that I made a very quick decision on.
Burt Reynolds showed him the dailies. He hired me right from that. I never met him, never read for him, never auditioned, tested nothing.
I thought she'd be a good contrast to Jessica, a good contrast to what was going on between them as opposed to what was going on between his relationship with Jessica's role of Evelyn.
And I finished the soap opera on a Friday, came here, wardrobed on Saturday and Sunday, and went up to Carmel and started shooting Monday morning. And I'd never met Clint until, well, the night before. We met in the bar, just to say hello.
You always try to hire the very best people. If they're well-known people, then it works fine. If they're not well-known, you hire them anyway because they're the best for that particular part.
I'm Sergeant McCallum.
John Large, a very good actor who I knew and had played golf with.
This is Sweet Almighty saying, hang in there, babies, because everything is going to be everything. Bye.
Jim McEachin was a guy who I thought had a lot of character and would be an interesting co-disc jockey.
Mr. Garver, Madge Brenner.
And the other people that came along were just all very best for that particular part.
Let's try to show a little class, shall we? Mr. Garver's residence.
Directing and acting, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be on Misty. I had seen it done before many times. There's many precedents for it. Everybody from Orson Welles and Laurence Olivier and all the people who had tried it, and some of them quite successfully. I just kind of, after a while, I got so you could throw the switch a little bit. Don kept on me all the time about don't slough yourself. He says the big temptation is going to be to spend all the time with the other actors and then slough your own performance. So I had to be careful of that. I always remembered those words and that's the one thing you have to be mindful of. And as I've done it now over the years, it's been 30 years since, I still once in a while remind myself, take your time, don't want to move on to the next thing just because you've got everybody else covered.
I was a little bit nervous about him as a director because this was the first thing that he was going to direct, and actors directing isn't always the best idea. They generally have not a great reputation as far as doing movies and things like that. So he was intimidating, but I knew from the first day of shooting that he was a director who knew exactly what he wanted, exactly how to get it. He had everything totally planned. And made me feel very comfortable because no matter what we were doing, he'd look at me too and he'd say, did you like that? Is that okay? I'd say, yeah, okay.
I never thought once about the fact that he was going to be both starring in the movie and directing it. It just never occurred to me that there was anything wrong with it. Actually, it was a nice match because he doesn't like to do too many takes, and I don't either. So usually we only did 1 or 2, maybe 3 takes on a shot. We had the same feeling about not over-rehearsing. It was a good match, I think.
We wanted to be away from the studio because it builds a certain spirit in the crew when you're off on location. It's like an army in the field. And no matter where you go, but especially Carmel, which is so photogenic, it really lent itself to this story beautifully. And Clint knew it, which was a great advantage because we didn't have to scout everything. He said, I think I can shoot this here and I can shoot that there.
It seemed to me that it would be a smaller location. It would be much more of a disc jockey being a big fish in a small pond rather than Los Angeles where there's hundreds of stations and many disc jockeys and so forth. So I knew a guy here who worked for a local station who was sort of like this guy. He was very, very popular and he was kind of a well-known celebrity, just being a well-known disc jockey in the area. So it could have worked in any small town. I could have made it in any small town in America, but it seemed because I knew this one, I picked this one, and also allowed me the chance to work at home.
Hi-ho, David, my man.
His home in the film belonged to Malcolm, and I can't think of Malcolm's last name, who lived in that house where Clint's character lived, and who ran a little art store where they made sculptures and things, in which we shot where Donna Mills was working. And he also knew the house on the cliff. He knew the restaurants. They all knew him. Even though he wasn't mayor yet for many years, he was like the unofficial mayor of the town, and everybody cooperated. We had great cooperation.
It was a small picture. It didn't cost very much. I think the direct costs on the film were $700,000 or $725,000 or something, less any overhead. And that was, even in those days, was still considered very modest.
In those days, it was very unusual to have every shot in a movie, especially a little under $1 million budget movie, be on the location. He was adamant that it be done this way. Nothing fake, no makeup, no process shots, no studio shots. It was, and I think it shows. It's very European in that way.
I didn't want to look like a television show, even though nowadays, I suppose if I was shooting for television, I'd shoot it the same way. It was done all on natural sets. There were no sets built for it. Very limited art direction. Most everything was just done by everybody on the crew pitching in.
This is Dave Garver with a little verse, a little talk, and 5 hours of music to be very, very nice to each other by.
I never had any idea of presentation, except that I had guest disc jockeyed a few times in my life, and I figured he was a jazz disc jockey, so he's probably not mainstream pop. With the AM mania, the real, quit talking like that kind of guy. It was the jazz disc jockeys are more cool, a little more laid back. Johnny Adams, who was a local disc jockey at KRML, the station that we used, he was very quiet, very smooth talking, very conversational.
KRML, Dave Garver speaking.
Hello.
Hi, what'll it be?
Play Misty for me.
Misty, huh? We have that right on the play rack.
Play Misty, for me, was the original title, and I always thought it was great because Misty was a classic song, is a classic song that has spanned quite a few generations. It expanded the 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's continued on being popular today. The studio suggested, how about using a song that Universal owns, like Strangers in the Night? And I said, what do you mean, like play Strangers in the Night for me or something? I said, that's been used in a film, very recent to that. And then they said, well, at the end of Strangers in the Night, he says, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. And he said, well, how about play Scooby-Dooby-Doo for me? And right then I said, this conversation's coming to an end. So we bought the song Misty, which cost $25,000, which is a lot of money then, from Errol Garner. I think it was important to keep a classic song that everybody knew and not to sort of whore out and decide because the studio owned that particular piece was not my idea of something to do. We wanted to add strings to it, and at that particular time, Garner was alive, and so we made the deal to cover him coming back, playing the tune, and then adding in strings and making it a little bit different version than he was playing on the radio, which was a record which only had Errol Garner with brushes and bass. Dee I'd known a long time. He hadn't done a lot of scores to a lot of movies, but he was a band leader in Los Angeles. I needed somebody that was affordable because I was on a very limited budget, and I wanted somebody who was young and energetic and would bring a lot of maybe a newer shot to it rather than using the same people that have been doing these kind of movies over and over.
Hi, Murphy.
Oh, hi, Dave. No messages for him.
He had worked with Don 2 or 3 films before that. We felt, well, this might be a good idea in case Clint needs a little backup. We'll start right off with Don, who's a director, and with Clint, who's going to be a director, and Don, who's going to be an actor, and Clint, who is an actor. Well, turned out there was nothing to worry about at all. Clint just immediately took charge.
He thought I was crazy doing it. He says, why aren't you hiring a really good, competent actor? Why do you want to hire me? I said, this will be a great experience for you, Don. You've directed and been on this side of the camera. You've never been on the other side. It'll make you more sympathetic to actors' problems. And also, it gives me an opportunity to have you there. I said, what happens if I fall on my face? I've got you there. And everybody will feel happy about that. And so he came down and did it, and of course he was so nervous he would have been no help to me if I'd asked him any pointers on as a director anyway, because he was so intense about trying to get this role, and he was so worried about every line. Finally, I made him throw away pieces of script and improvise a lot of it.
Thanks for the plug.
What are friends for?
Bartender.
Coke? Coming right up.
I thought she should look terribly average, in an average mode of dress. In those days, it was, the mini skirts with the boots, little jacket, little blouse, not fancy at all. I think my clothing budget was probably $300 for the whole thing, which would have been $600 in those days, $600. No money was spent on clothing, that's for sure, and none on makeup because Clint doesn't like makeup. He once said, I don't want that shot out of a Canon Universal look, because in those days the makeup was so thick and fake eyelashes, and he really stuck to it. I tried to sneak on makeup and he'd give me one of those looks, so I'd wash it off.
One game?
Cry Bastion?
What else?
Okay, Coach.
The bartender was based from the bartender that I knew named Murphy. So I thought it'd be fun to play the game that was called Cry Bastion that Murphy used to play. And Cry Bastion was just a fake game. They'd set up a lot of bottle tops on the bar, and they'd yell Cry Bastion and move the bottle tops, and people would watch and say, no, no, no.
Alfrey's Gambit.
Dirty rat.
And so we just set it up and played it, and I just told Don, I said, the game doesn't make any sense. It's a ploy to get the interest of somebody who's sitting down the way. So just make it up as you go. And so we kind of made it up. Well, at the beginning, he took his script and he clipped it all, and he had little pieces stuck in various areas so that he thought that he could go read the lines real quick.
Cry Bastion.
I said, Don, you can't do that. In first place, your eyesight isn't, you're sitting there looking and staring at something that looks kind of odd. I said, just say anything.
Nice game. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What happened?
I won.
How? When?
When you said okay.
I ought to be mad.
There's a big trap when you play somebody who's crazy, and that's to play them like they're crazy. I played her as if she were the all-American girl next door. It was that simple. I never thought of her as crazy. It's very important that this be a very seemingly normal person, or else there's no fun in discovering, that she's not.
The studio suggested, why don't we show her as an escapee from a mental institution or something like that. And I said, well, if you know she's a mental case, then there's no mystery to the story.
It would be much more frightening psychologically if you didn't know where this woman was coming from. So we didn't start it off that way, because I think that would have probably given the whole thing away. As a matter of fact, we changed certain things in the original script. When they met at the bar, and he asked, what do you want? I think if the original was something, I'll have a vodka stinger or something. And I said, no. We shouldn't have any kind of allusions to the fact that, she might be going off the deep end or something.
Care for a drink?
Okay.
What'll it be?
Surprise me.
And then there was another scene where she comes to the door of his place.
What do you want, Evelyn?
One Coke?
That was originally, can I have a drink? But I didn't want her to be a drinker, a smoker. I wanted her to be just as pure as the driven snow.
Don't you like me?
You're a very nice girl.
everything seemed kind of idyllic until little things start springing up, and slowly we get the clues that there's something odd there.
How'd you like to go screw yourself?
Hey, take it easy.
She gets all kind of wrapped up in being coquettish and very childlike, and at the other time she goes into madness, and the other time she's very sexual or sensual. So, and all of those three things are very typical of schizophrenia.
Surprise!
I had a very simple through line. She had to have this man or die. And everything came off that. The objectives of every scene, why she did what she did, you know, the logic of what she did was to save her life, because if she didn't have him, she would die.
Bye. See you later.
I never thought of Misty as a horror movie. I thought of it as a very intense love story. Of course, that's my character's point of view, but that's how I thought of it. I think every actor has to like the person that they're playing. There's got to be something about even the worst people in the world that is decent and good about them, and you have to find that in the person because you have to play the vulnerability.
You don't have to come over, Dave, if you've got something better to do.
No, that's all right. I'll be over in a little while. You and I are going to have a talk.
Actually, it was suggested to do, which Fatal Attraction did when they remade the film, or came close to remaking it, was to make him a guy who maybe was married or something. And then I thought, no, because that's obvious there's a big problem there, because then he's out philandering and et cetera. And this way, he doesn't really have any commitments. He's got this girlfriend he'd like to reconcile with, but basically he's a free guy. And how does a free guy get manipulated like that? And that's what makes it interesting to me.
Oh, let me come over. If I could just see you, just talk to you.
No, Evelyn.
But I love you, David. I love you.
I really give Clint credit for a lot of things that made me look good in that movie.
I don't care how many ways you say it, it's not true!
What I have to do to convince you?
It's not true! Let me just wash my face, huh?
I remember in the Suicide when she's in the bathroom. When I drop down slowly to the floor, and then you see the wrists are all bloody. That's all him. I can't take credit for any of that. The scene in the bed where she wakes up screaming from a nightmare after she's tried to kill herself.
Take it easy.
I had a dream. I was drowning in the ocean.
The way he shot that, and the camera then goes into him, and you see him in his trapped.
That's where she's using every tool, including not only the threat of suicide, but the attempt of suicide. And she's got him completely under her thumb now. And we pull back and we pull back and we pull back. And the whole idea was that he's just a trapped animal. He can't do anything. The big question when I started to make this film is because I was associated with action films, especially in the 60s, the studio seemed to think I had some obligation to be a person who was infallible, kind of indestructible, maybe. I said, that's not this movie. This movie is a person who, regardless of his physical strength, is totally at the mercy of the manipulations of this particular person.
Isn't this nice? Just us here, together.
A wonderful thing about Clint as a director was the fact that he would go with you if you improvised a little bit.
Is that your idea of a dish? My God, she's a little old for you, isn't she?
And I remember in the scene where I find him in the restaurant.
She could get laid at a lumber camp!
And I scream at her, whatever, and he throws me into a taxi cab.
She's nothing! Nothing!
We couldn't even loop. We had to do looping on a lot of these scenes. We couldn't loop the scene where I'm hanging out of the taxi screaming, I only did it because I love you, etc., because it was like so crazy.
Please,
Where to?
Because I love you. I did it because I love you. Don't you understand?
When it came to looping, I said, I don't think I could do that because I couldn't follow. Nobody could follow it. He said, okay, then we won't. You know, that kind of going with the artistic choice rather than the technical.
Please.
I'm not very happy with you.
I always saw her as somebody who screamed. I mean, I've never killed anybody, so I don't know what it must be like. I should think it's a huge release, which includes screaming. We certainly looped a lot of screams into that movie, I can tell you, and I learned how to handle a knife, which I never knew. There's a way Clint taught me, you have to hold it like this, and then twist it so it catches the light. It looks so scary and eerie that way. When we did the scene of hacking up the maid, he wanted blood. And this darling makeup artist that I loved, Jack Freeman, brought little Vicine bottles of blood. And Clint said, no, you don't understand. I want buckets. I want buckets. And sure enough, Jack went and he got more blood in pails. But he splashed them all over the walls. He went all the way.
What she really needs is psychiatric help.
Really?
I need a couple of more days to try and figure out where I'm at.
I wanted to do a nice idyllic scene where he was sort of reconciling with the girlfriend, Donna Mills' character. I heard the Roberta Flack song on the radio coming to work one day, and I said, oh yeah, this tells the story. So I said if I could buy that. So I had a little bit of problem buying it, but we finally got it.
And he played it for me, and I went, oh, wow. I mean, it's the most beautiful song I've ever heard.
On the Jazz Festival that day, we shot 30,000 feet of film. We had cameramen all over. Just said, grab anything you can.
That wasn't a crowd that was extras and, you know, that all set up and stuff like that. We just went in with a bare crew, sound and camera, no lights, nothing, and shot it. And that, again, is a precursor to the way things are shot, because at that time, nothing was shot that way. Now they shoot even television things that way, but they didn't then. I thought it was really inventive and really good.
The big problem I had was, how do I hide from the audience, who are much smarter than most people give them credit for, the fact that Evelyn is going to move in with the Donna Mills character? How do I hide that? Because if you just go ahead and have a scene where Donna Mills starts talking about the roommate, then right away the people would get the sense of something. So I kind of buried it in the Jazz Festival.
I've got to pick up my roommate, Annabelle.
Madeline's your roommate.
I found my man, and I'm moving out.
And Annabelle's moving in.
Right.
I didn't want to hammer it home, so it sets it up and everybody goes, uh-oh, here comes the roommate. So it does come as a surprise. At least for most of us, I think it did.
Hello?
Play Misty for me.
That's another one you don't want to give away what's going on. I guess I could have done it from behind somebody's hand or something, walking across the room and gone into his face, and you could have, right away, you know something's going to happen. I didn't want that. I just wanted to, sleeping. And then the idea is you don't know whether he's dreaming, and all of a sudden he looks up and bam, she's there.
Just hope we're lucky enough to grab her the next time she tries it.
Tries what?
Kill you.
You and I ought to stay away from each other for a couple of days.
She's already following you, isn't she?
I don't want you to worry about it. I can handle myself.
Hey, Annabelle, how's that
Now
stuff
here's
coming?
something soft.
Hope you like cinnamon in yours.
Working with Jessica Walter was wonderful. She's a wonderful actress. And I met her probably the second or third day of shooting. Actually, we became very good friends, and I ended up living in her guest house when I came down to Los Angeles because I didn't have a place to live, and she offered me her guest house to live in.
The eyes are wrong. David's are more, how shall I say, colder.
She's a very precise actress and very strong, so that You never felt wishy-washy with her. You always knew exactly what was going to be done, how it was going to be done.
God, you're dumb.
The funny thing is, off-screen, we were running around together and seeing all the sights and things like that. And, you know, on the screen, she was cutting off my hair and trying to kill me.
Toby?
We're waiting for you, David.
The painting was done by a local artist, a guy named Don Hidecutter, who is, I think he's up in San Jose now, but he was here at the time. He just volunteered to do it. He said, will you give me a credit on the screen? I said, fine. So the only trouble is, this is a movie, so I'll need 3 or 4 copies of things. So I need 3 or 4 copies of this one she tears up. And to the other girl, nobody knows yet, because we haven't cut to that. We just see her working on this painting. Maybe she's killed her, too. Maybe not. We don't know. So we'll keep that in the offing.
Careful. What I had to do to poor Donna, cutting her hair and menacing her.
Careful.
The poor girl.
Does he run his fingers through your hair?
I was wearing a wig because I didn't want them to cut my hair.
Have to get you all nice for David.
But it was still scary because they were huge scissors and she was very close to my face.
I hope he likes what he sees when he walks in here.
I didn't realize when we were shooting it how scary the movie was going to be.
Because that's what he's taking to hell with him.
Until I saw the movie. He's a master at setting up that kind of suspense.
I think that was the most exhausting sequence in the movie. Many, many days on that. But of course, when you're acting and you're enjoying what you're doing, you could go on forever. Clint is always prepared. He always knows what's going to happen. It was very carefully blocked, and it was very carefully plotted out. It was tiring, but it's an exhilarating kind of tiring.
I like not seeing things specifically, and the night offers you a way to do that. You get little excerpts of things, and you can also use sound effects. And just things like that puts everybody ill at ease. I was doing much like I do today, just kind of winging a lot of things. I have a definite plan in mind, but at the same token, I'm not adverse to altering that plan or embellishing that plan as I'm filming it. And because I move rather quickly, I get my motor going, and I get also the motor going of all of the members of the crew, and everybody starts giving you good input and good things happen. You've heard about people in institutions where you get a person that's crazy has sometimes a tremendous amount of strength. Here's this crazy person who's got a kitchen knife. She's already committed homicide, so she's already gone way over the top, so it's going to be a desperation move. And my character, I wasn't playing a guy who was particularly a violent character like some of the other movies. This is a guy who's a disc jockey. He's never been in a situation like this before. So he's kind of desperate about his girlfriend and is desperate about himself.
There was quite a bit of discussion about Clint Eastwood hitting a woman and knocking her through the window. As Clint said, by that time in the movie, anybody's going to want to jump up and hit her and knock her through the window.
In the original story, the detective is stabbed but not killed by Evelyn, and so he does. At the ending of the story is he conveniently shoots Evelyn, and that's the end of it. Well, I wanted a little bit bigger thing, so we rented a house that's on a cliff down in the Highlands here, south of Carmel, someplace where it could all go over the top. I thought the cliff and her and the sea and the plan and Misty would be quite dynamic, rather than just have her shot and she's laying on the floor.
My stunt double, who was a wonderful stunt lady named Julie Johnson that I had actually worked with before, she took the final punch at the end of the film. That was a dummy that went all that way. She went a little way, and then the dummy went all the way. Then when you see Evelyn lying in the water in the Pacific Ocean, 30 Degrees. That was me.
I was petrified going to the first sneak preview. I don't like going to those anyway, so we snuck it in San Jose, and I put on a hat and glasses and disguised myself and a beard or what have you, and went and sat in the audience. And I sat behind all these little teenage girls, and it was going along pretty good, and then the first time there was a sort of a psychotic moment out of Evelyn. These gals jumped right out of their teeth.
How'd you like to go screw yourself?
So by then I thought, I think we're on the road to something here. John was very proud of it, and he came over, and John Cassavetes, and John liked it a lot too. He thought it was great. He says, there's only one trouble with this movie, and I said, what's that? And he says, it doesn't have Hitchcock name on it. And I said, oh, really? He says, oh, yeah. He says, if his name was on it, people would be giving this all kinds of things.
It opened up, among other places, at the Cinerama Dome Theater in Hollywood. And they had a 4-week engagement there. And each week it would do a little bigger business than it had done the week before. But they were obligated by contract for a Christmas movie to come in. And I had gone down to see how the business was doing the first week, and I got to know the manager, and he said, I really don't want to yank it out here, but I have no choice. And sure enough, the next week, the Christmas movie came in. Business dropped off to 1/4 of what it had been with Misty, and he felt very bad about it. He was very down about it, because business was Misty was a big hit.
Even though some reviewers liked the film a lot, and a lot of them dismissed it because, as I've always fond of saying, not too many people were sure they were ready to accept me as an actor, much less a director.
I remember thinking upon seeing Misty, it was pretty good. I mean, it was really a very stirring, interesting, quirky movie. I mean, the truth of the matter is, as the years have gone on, that movie seems better than it seemed initially, and it's partly because it's such a unique movie. I mean, I guess we're seeing more stalkers in movies in the last decade or two than we did in those days. But there's never been a movie that quite worked that sexual nexus in the same way as Play Misty.
But that's no reason we shouldn't sleep together tonight if we feel like it.
Well, the first thing I learned on the movie was you never have to worry about Clint as a director. Clint is, in my opinion, the top director in the business today. You hire him, you get the very best direction, you get it on schedule, you get it on budget, and it's highly creative and it's wonderful. He would ask various people, he trusted their judgment, what do you think of this? Then he would digest it all, but the final decision was always his. He went by his basic instincts.
When it was over, I remember the last day, I really shed a few tears, I did. But I remember saying to Clint, he had his little pickup truck, and he drove me back to the motel. And little tears came out. I said, I'm so sorry it's over, because it really was a labor of love on everybody's part.
It seems as fresh today as it did then, as scary today, which is really saying something, because there have been lots of scary movies. There's been lots of things done with cameras and this and that, and this is pretty basic, but it's real, inventive, and precise storytelling that just makes it grow and then get you. I think it says that that's what lasts. That's what keeps people riveted to their seats. That kind of storytelling, and Clint knows how to do it.
Well, I've never done another movie like this one because I've never had another script that seemed to lay out logically. I like doing departures, but at the same token, if I had another script as good as that one that would fit in with me and my present day maturity, I would certainly attempt it. But it was a great time. I haven't seen the picture in many, many years. If I saw it again, I'd probably say, well, I could do this a little different than that. And I'm fond of saying that I probably would really wreck it, because whatever my thoughts were at that time were probably the proper ones. If I did it now, I might make it slicker, but it might not have the same energy or something. Misty was very important in my life, and I've directed a lot of films since then. Maybe I wouldn't have done any if I hadn't taken that opportunity at that particular time.
We don't have a goddamn thing between us. But I love you!
She's already following you, isn't she?
Don't leave me!
Because this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by you. Play Misty for me.
prior to Play Misty, Clint had established himself, I think, as a significant actor. You know, he'd begun to work with Don Siegel. He had also started to do films. Beguiled would be a notable example that, you know, were more aspiring. And in fact, I think Beguiled, in a curious way, kind of matches up with Play Misty in the sense that both of those figures that he plays in those movies are, they're men who are kind of confident in their own sexuality. I mean, they sort of feel that should a sexual situation arise, that they can handle it and deal with it. There's a kind of, especially so in Misty, a kind of sort of sleepy arrogance about the figure sexually.
What am I gonna do with you?
A lot. I'm gonna be with any young lady that desires my company.
The figure's a little more troubled in Beguiled, and Beguiled, of course, ends tragically.
No one in this house is safe as long as he remains here. The only question now is how to rid ourselves of him.
These strange, sexually repressed women in this isolated girls' school in the middle of the war actually do him in, and they do him in large measure because he has gone through that place like a dose of the plague. Play Misty's a somewhat different thing, and it ends, I guess you could call it, happily.
And those films, Beguiled, it has a little bit of similarity, no similarities in story or period or anything, but you do have, again, people who have all kinds of different motivations coming at you. There's 7 female parts and 1 major male part. And a guy is somebody who's trying to save his existence. He's trying to stay in this comforting thing and stay out of the war, and he has to win these women over. And in doing so, he kind of goes overboard, and it all turns bad for him. Beguiled certainly wasn't a big successful film, but it was a fun film to make, and I'm glad I made it. If I hadn't done those kind of films then, or started thinking in terms of doing those kind of films then, I would have never been in the position to make films in the 90s like Perfect World or Bridges in Madison County or what have you along the way, because I would have maybe not even films like Every Which Way But Loose, because I would have always been, I could have gone the easy route and been portrayed as Clint Eastwood, a guy with a gun in his hand and making some smart remarks somewhere. That's fun for a moment, but then there's other parts to life too.
He's a very non-directorial director, if by directorial we mean, you know, somebody who's sort of saying, you will do this and you will not do that, and, you know, all that stuff. I mean, he just doesn't act that way. I believe that manner was partly derived from Don Siegel. You know, he was a tense guy on the set, but he exuded calm. So I think Clint's directorial manner derives somewhat from Don Siegel. Well, Don always had this habit of, he'd get down next to the camera and he'd do that, you know, crossing his fingers, hoping for the take to be good. And Clint said it used to always break him up. I mean, you'd see Don, he was all set to go, and it'd be Don like that.
They had worked together quite a bit, and they admired each other greatly. And Don respected Clint enormously, and he and Don worked very closely together, and Don took suggestions from Clint. There was a scene in Beguiled where Clint is being carried, badly wounded, into the house, and he holds the camera so he can get the perspective of the girls who are picking him up and carrying him. And that was a suggestion which they used in the film, which Don liked very much. How they worked together day by day was enormous respect, cooperation, suggestions. They were a good team together. Don was always the director. Clint respected that. It was the first day we shot Misty. A great deal of fun was had by all. And Don kept laughing and apologizing for being a lousy actor who could say the words but not get the action, or could get the action and not remember the words. But we got it all done right on schedule. Everybody had a good time. Don
was always looking for fun things, so he had put on the marquee of the theater when we were shooting the sequence in Dirty Harry, Play Misty for me. It was a surprise when I was supposed to come on the set and see that. So, and then I directed a little bit of Dirty Harry too. Don was ill, came down with a flu and kind of a heavy fever, and we had to shoot a suicide jumper sequence at night, and Don said, boy, I'm just feeling miserable, would you do it? And I said, sure, I did it. So we went, I helped there. We had a great collaboration. He was just a wonderful guy and a wonderful filmmaker. And whether it was that film or Escape from Alcatraz or any of the others, we had some good laughs. It was a fun era, and I learned a lot from him.
For Clint Eastwood, an invitation to terror.
You ever find yourself being completely smothered by somebody?
There's no escape in passion. There's no escape in speed. There's no escape from terror.
You will change the locks, huh?
Nobody asked you to wait for it.
You're not dumping me, Buster Blue Eyes!
Get off my back, Evelyn.
Play Misty for me.
Get off my back.
Play Misty for me.
Get off my back.
Play Misty for me.
Get off my back.
Play Misty for me.
The most terrifying words you'll ever hear. Play Misty for me. The screen's most frightening plunge into terror.
Have to get you all nice for David. I hope he likes what he sees when he walks in here. Because that's what he's taking to hell with him.
Just hope we're lucky enough to grab her the next time she tries it.
Tries what?
To kill you.
The next scream you hear will be your own.